time on companies which had their offices in the trade towers, and there is no company, to the best of our knowledge, which has been more profoundly affected than a company called Cantor Fitzgerald.
To some on Wall Street, Cantor Fitzgerald sort of symbolizes the devastation of the terrorist attack. When American Airlines Flight number 11 crashed into the North Tower, it cut off any hope of escape for almost all of the Cantor employees.
The global leader in real
In the high-flying world of high finance, the company of Cantor Fitzgerald occupies an elite position. Last year, the firm handled $50 trillion of business as an exchange market for banks and companies doing trades in the global bond market. And for its headquarters, Cantor chose an elite location, proudly showcased in its corporate video, the North Tower of the World Trade Center. About 1,000 of Cantor's employees worked on the 101st, 103rd, 104th, and 105th floors of the tower. Doug Gardner was the chief financial officer of Cantor. His wife, Jennifer.
Doug is everyone's shoulders. If you need support, his shoulders. If you need money or a helping hand, there was his hands. If you needed legs for a basketball game, he was there. He just was everybody's rock, everybody's center, the warmest, kindest, biggest smile, big blue eyes, the most delicious man you ever met.
As CFO, Gardner had a window office on the executive wing of the 105th floor. Gardner liked to get in early. He was at his desk at 8:48 a.m. on Tuesday. Jennifer Gardner didn't find out right away that a plane had crashed into the North Tower, hitting between floors 96 and 103. She was with her children, Michael and Julia.
Did your husband talk to anyone that morning when the plane hit?
Yes. Doug's father, Joe Gardner, called Doug at 10 of 9 when he heard on the news that there was a explosion. And Doug answered the phone and said, "We're evacuating. We have to get out of here." And Doug's father just said, "Go, go." So, you know, I heard someone called me and told me that someone talked to Doug, and I was like, fine. So I went home kind of casually to watch what happened. And then I saw the building collapse, and I felt his presence just leave me.
Cantor Fitzgerald has set up a corporate center at the Pierre Hotel, providing up-to-date information and grief counseling. 2 employees who were on the concourse level survived, badly burned in critical condition. None of the hundreds of employees on the upper floors is believed to have made it out.
Have you told your children?
Julia doesn't really understand anything. She feels the intense emotion around her, but she's still too much of a baby. Michael is 5. He knows. We told him that there was a big accident at Daddy's building, and we can't find him. And then the next day he woke up and he said, "I think Daddy died." I want them to know that Daddy did not leave because he wanted to, but that he was taken. And then it wasn't his fault, and it wasn't their fault, and that Daddy loved them.
Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, was best friends with Doug Gardner. Lutnick had been on top of the world, celebrating his 40th birthday this past July in Europe with Doug and Jennifer Gardner and other friends in the company. Last Tuesday, his world and his company crumbled around him.
Of the 1,000 Cantor employees at the Trade Center, only 300 are accounted for at this time, and none was at the building at that time. This immense human loss has truly devastated the chairman and CEO, Howard Lutnick, whose own brother is missing and presumed dead. You have suffered such great professional and personal loss. I mean, what is the fate of your brother?
Well, my brother was on the 103rd floor. He worked for me, and he worked at Cantor, and he called my sister just after the plane hit, and he told her that he said that the smoke was pouring in. He was stuck in a corner office. There was no way out, and the smoke was coming in, and he's not good, and things are not good, and he's not going to make it. And he just wanted to say that he loved her. And he wanted to say goodbye and tell everyone that he loved them. And then the phone went dead. So while I'm the head of the company, I'm trying to help my 700 employees who are missing their loved ones. I'm just another one of them. Just another one of them.
Normally, you would have been in your office on which floor?
105th floor. On
the 105th floor. And yet you didn't go in early that morning because of a critical decision you made.
My little boy, I have a 5-year-old, and it was his first day of kindergarten at Horace Mann, so I took him for his first day of big boy school. And because of that, I was late getting down to the office, and therefore I wasn't in the building. I was on my way to the building.
Good morning, Lorie. Good morning. My name is Lorie Van Auken. I am speaking today on behalf of 9/11 widows Monica Gabriel and Mindy Kleinberg, who are here with me today. On the morning of September 11th, my husband Kenneth was killed while at his office on the 105th floor of the North Tower at the World Trade Center. We extend our sincere thanks to you, Representative McKinney, as well as to all of those who are responsible for setting up this hearing and giving us this opportunity today. On the morning of September 11th, I received the following message from my husband, Kenneth.
Old messages. I love you. I'm in the World Trade Center. The building was hit by something. I don't know if I'm going to get out, but I love you very much. I hope I'll see you later. Bye.
End of messages.
From his words, I knew that Ken survived the impact of the plane. So I tried to call him back, but there was no answer. I fell to my knees in a panic, still clutching the telephone. A moment later, when the phone rang, it startled me completely. I prayed that it was Ken. But it was my mother. She told me to turn the television on. I told her about Ken's message. I told her that I couldn't reach him. I told her that I was very scared. I watched the TV in utter horror as black smoke billowed out from the building through a gaping hole the size of an airplane. I knew that Kenny was in that building. I watched as the people ran from the World Trade Center, hoping for a glimpse of my husband. Then the second tower was hit. As I continued to watch the breaking news, they showed the president sitting in an elementary school classroom, juxtaposed with the footage of the black smoke coming from the World Trade Center, along with people jumping to their deaths from the burning buildings. I screamed at the television, "Get up, President Bush, get up and do something." But he remained seated in a classroom of small children. I watched as Andrew Card whispered something to the president, and yet, still my president remained seated in a classroom of small children when our country was so obviously under a terrorist attack. In between panic and hysteria, in between hoping that my husband would get out of the World Trade Center alive, and wondering how I would ever break this news to my children, I also wondered why the Secret Service was letting the president stay in the classroom full of children. Why didn't they whisk him away? It seemed as if every target in America was being attacked. So wasn't the president, the leader of the free world, in danger of being fatally attacked as well? Weren't the children who were in the classroom with the president in danger too? After 2 days and hundreds of phone calls to New York City hospitals and to the Red Cross, receiving no guidance and absolutely no answers, my husband's employer, Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, recounted on a news program that no one who was in the offices of Cantor Fitzgerald at the time of the attacks had survived. That meant that Ken was gone. My looming and painful question as to whether or not my husband had survived was now answered. We now knew that the time for hoping was over. Our lives were forever changed. My children would never again see their father, and I was now a widow. The grieving was just beginning. With what felt like a gaping hole in my heart, with 2 traumatized teens to now raise alone, I wondered if I would ever feel like eating or breathing again. For me, one horribly sad question had been answered, but many more questions would soon follow. The questions began to gnaw at me slowly at first. I wondered how on earth almost 2 hours could have passed with 4 domestic commercial airplanes flying around the skies of America without a response from our military. I began to Google search and read whatever articles and timelines I could get my hands on. Once I began my research into 9/11, I found it hard to leave the computer. Because I was unable to sleep and because I needed desperately to reconstruct and understand the events of 9/11, it began to appear to those close to me that I was shackled to the computer, and I have to admit, in a manner of speaking, I was. Having connected with a few other widows, it was not long before we were all researching the events, while we waited for an official inquiry into the attacks to be initiated. Then the news came. Only intelligence agency failures would be examined. How could that be? Our husbands were killed at their desks when commercial airplanes flew into their office buildings. They had no means of escaping and had practically no chance of evacuating on 9/11. The buildings that were supposedly so magnificently designed had collapsed in minutes. Why would the investigation of our loved ones' murders be limited to only intelligence agencies? What about airline security, high-rise building security, and border security? What about the FAA, the Port Authority, the Secret Service, and NORAD, all of whom were partly to blame for the failures that allowed the 9/11 attacks to occur? Didn't those areas and entities need to be investigated too? Incredulous but undeterred, we realized that it was necessary to take a thorough and independent look at what had gone wrong on 9/11. Our children were going to have to grow up in this changed world, and we needed to make sure that this could never happen again. We knew that with the 3,000 deaths on 9/11, there remained thousands of questions that needed to be answered. So We fought for the creation of the 9/11 Commission, and with all of America by our side, we finally won that battle. The Commission was passed into law in the autumn of 2002, and by January 2003, the Commission finally sat down